Well, a new report shows forests in the southeast have been hit hard by last year's drought. Good evening to you. I'm Jennifer Andrews. Charles Burkett spoke to experts about dying forests here in the ArkLaMiss.
We're not sure the extent yet after last year's drought, followed by beetles, some other miscellaneous diseases. We don't know what they are yet.
Joshua Adams with Louisiana Tech Forestry Program says dying forests are a concern for the economy in the ArkLaMiss. A recent report from the U.S. Forestry Service shows how forests in these southern states have now seen the effects of the 2023 drought. In December, an estimated 12 million trees had died in the south. By late January 2024, it had risen by 50% of that initial calculation.
The winter of 2022, when we experienced a flash freeze and then stayed sub-freezing, had sub-freezing temperatures for several days in a row.
In the summer of 2023, record high temperatures further altered the landscape of forests in the southern U.S. states.
That's why we're seeing a lot of stress with trees. Not only pine, but deciduous species too.
The issue is with the soil.
Where there's heavy foot traffic and the soils are compacted, like in a park, a city park like this, or in a residential situation where lawns might get heavy traffic.
This causes soil not to allow aeration and blocks hydration from reaching the tree. Hefner tells residents to watch their trees and watch how they grow through the rest of the summer, plus during the leaf drop stage this fall.
More importantly, how they come out of dormancy next spring. And if trees start shedding large pieces of bark, or if you notice sawdust around the base of the tree or in the crotches of the branches, that might indicate a beetle infestation.
Adams says research will also help to slow down the impact.
But we're going to have to rethink our strategy, whether it's planting differently, different species, how to make our forests more resilient to a changing, ever-changing environment.
Charles Burkett, KNOE 8 News.